Well, we are inside the Facebook group Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention, and I am Laurel Brennan, and I am here with Dr. Heather Sandison. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's a pleasure, Laurel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the bio. So for those of you who do not know Dr. Heather Sandison, we are very, very lucky to have her here today, and you will learn why. So Dr. Heather Sandison, is the founder of Solcere Health Clinic and Marama, the first residential care facility for the elderly of its kind. You're going to hear more about both of them. At Solcere, Dr. Sandison and her team of doctors and health coaches focus primarily on supporting patients looking to optimize cognitive function, prevent mental decline, and reverse dementia by addressing root causes of imbalance in the brain and body. She was awarded a grant to study an individualized integrative approach to reversing dementia and is the primary investigator on the ITHNCLR clinical trial. We'll have to learn what that acronym stands for. At Marama, Dr. Sandison has created an immersive residential experience in the lifestyle proven to best support brain health. She understands that changing your diet, adding nutrients, creating community, and optimizing a healing environment are all challenging, even for those with full cognitive capacity. At Marama, she's done the work for you. All you need to do is show up. She is also the host of the Reverse Alzheimer's Summit and Collective Insights podcast, where she works to share what is possible for those suffering with dementia. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Sandison, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So what brought you into the work that you're doing? People usually have a story. What's your story?
This work found me. I was at a conference on mental health and saw a talk by Dr. Dale Bredeson, one of my mentors, and he was describing how you could reverse dementia. And this was, I think he had only published one paper with 3 parts. There were 3 case studies that had been published of people reversing cognitive decline. And he was proposing this entire approach. And I was very skeptical because my teachers, all of my instructors, very intelligent, well-meaning people had told me that this was impossible. And to suggest that you could reverse Alzheimer's or dementia to anyone would be to do them a disservice, really to give them false hope. And when Dr. Bredeson was describing it, I appreciated that he came from this complex system science kind of approach. That's very much how I think of things is, there's this complex system. Of course, the brain and the human body are complex systems. I think we can all agree on that. And so to imagine that you would have this complex chronic disease that you could have one single intervention that you could swallow as a pill or take as an IV that would reverse it, it's kind of like crazy, really, when you think about it, right? I know that that's what we're socialized to think, and we're kind of trained to think that that's what we should expect, that at some point science is going to save us and we're going to have this magic pill. Really, when you think about it, like clearly multiple things affect cognitive function and affect brain function. And this radical idea that Dr. Bredeson was proposing was like, hey, let's see what happens when you just do everything that you can to enhance neuronal function, or that cellular unit of the brain. When you enhance the function of that, what happens? What do you get? And of course, you get improvement. You get improvement in health of the whole body because you can't separate everything above the neck, right, from the rest of the body. So when you improve function of the brain, you really, like, the side effects of this approach are that blood pressure is modulated and gets better, that blood sugar and metabolism gets better, that obesity resolves, that people sleep better and their mood is better. So many things get better because really this is an anti-aging approach. And what happened was I was intrigued by what Dr. Bredeson was saying, but skeptical still, of course. And I went to his training. And then once I had gone to his training, I was on his list. And so then patients started coming to me who were less skeptical, very enthusiastic. And one of my first patients, her name was Linda. She came in with her husband, and you could tell that she was just a shell of herself, but still this bright, big personality, this huge smile. She wore loud clothes. and she wanted to be in it. You know, you could tell she had been very social, but she only had one word answers. She could say yes or no to simple questions. But if I tried to ask her, like, what did you have for dinner last night? I could see her brain kind of making sense of the question. But by the time she started to try to answer, she had forgotten the question. Her handwriting was affected. Of course, her relationship with her husband was severely affected. And it was so sad, heartbreaking. And I kind of really, like a few of the patients I was seeing at that point, I didn't really think too much of it. But they were, again, enthusiastic and committed to the process. And so they did everything that Bredeson suggests. And I facilitated, of course, for them. We got her on bioidentical hormone replacement. She went to a biological dentist right away and had all of her amalgams out, had her teeth, deep cleaned and made sure there were no cavitations, got all of her dental work done. They moved out of a moldy bedroom. So they moved actually from their bedroom into their living room, which wasn't moldy. They started ballroom dancing 3 days a week. They got on all the supplements. They got into ketosis, fully into ketosis right away. And I saw her 6 weeks later, and she had a MoCA. She had gone from a MoCA of 2, which perfect is a 30, and 2 is like pretty close to nonverbal. 2 is very severe dementia. Well, in 6 weeks, she was a MoCA of 7. And when I saw that, my first response was like, to be like, did we do it wrong last time? Like this isn't supposed to be possible. My brain was like, does not compute. And then I just started crying. I was like, wait, because you could also see that it wasn't just a MoCA score that had changed. Her relationship with her husband had changed. She was bickering with him about something that had happened the night before, and her handwriting had changed. And, on her MoCA, you draw a clock. And she started putting numbers on the clock. Like the clock wasn't perfect, but there had been no numbers there before. And now there were numbers. And you could interact with her in a way, it wasn't just one word answers anymore. She couldn't answer complex questions, but she could start to carry on a conversation. She could string words together. This was a different Linda. And when I saw that, I just couldn't help but think, like, if this is possible for someone with a MoCA of 2, what's possible for someone with a MoCA of 22?
Mm-hmm.
And how much suffering in the world could we be preventing and potentially like avoiding, right? And as you well know, dementia is not just about the patient. Like the suffering affects everyone in their lives. And it is morally such a struggle. I mean, physically, emotionally, financially, so debilitating for so many families. And if there are people who can, this approach takes work. This is not a simple pill, and it's not free. It takes time, it takes effort. But if everyone should know, like, I feel like it's injustice that not everyone knows that this is an option.
Right, right. Well, thank you for doing the work, and thank you for being open-minded and going down that road, even though you were skeptical. And I appreciate that you're skeptical. I'm also a skeptic, and I think it keeps us, in the right headspace, because I get a lot of pushback in the little bit that I've been out there, saying, could Alzheimer's be preventable and reversible? Like, even when I had that as a headline in a presentation, like, people were almost angry. That's not true. Why are you saying that?
Right.
So, but like you said, it's not an easy fix. There are still people out there with heart disease and diabetes that's reversible and preventable as well.
Right.
So
right. Not everyone's going to choose to take this path. Right. Absolutely. But everyone should know that this path is an option.
Yes.
And so I continue to be skeptical and have a lot of patients asking the question, which is completely reasonable, right? I ask the same question. If I spend the money, right? Because the supplements cost money, the labs cost money, all of it takes time and requires resources and effort. And if I do all of this, how likely is it that myself or my loved one is going to get better? And that is a very, very reasonable question that we don't have exact numbers for. However, that inspired me to do the clinical trial in my office. So we recruited 36 participants, and we ended up at the end with 23 of them finishing 6 months. We did all of this in the middle of COVID. And so it was a little bit of a mess and took way longer than it was supposed to. But that trial will be published hopefully soon. I just got off of a call right before jumping on with you with one of my co-authors on that paper. And we're trying to get that out as soon as possible, because every day that it's not, I feel like, people aren't learning that this is an option. And just going through that process has given me so much confidence, because we did so much measuring. And what I'll just say now is, like, more often than not, it works. And so, without going into details, and obviously, like, it hasn't been peer reviewed. We're still putting together the manuscript, but that gave me so much more confidence in this, and we have way more confidence if people are younger, if they are earlier on in the disease process, and the more comprehensively they embrace the protocol. So if you are doing just exercise, you might get a little improvement or a little prevention there. If you do just the diet, kind of same thing. But if you start putting all of the pieces together, that's when it's this virtuous cycle. You start getting, the sleep helps with your diet decisions, and then the diet helps with your energy levels. So then now you're going to engage in the other pieces, and then it just all helps and supports each other. So when you do all of it, you definitely get better results.
Right.
But you don't have to do all of it. We still see people who do the pieces that they can, and they get benefit. So I don't want to talk anybody out of it. But definitely we have more confidence the more comprehensively, if you dive fully in rather than just dipping your toe in.
Right, exactly. So that is the long acronym that I mentioned, the ITHNCLR.
Yes. So that, and you can look this up on clinicaltrials.gov, so there's more information that's out there. It's the integrative therapy for holistic, natural cognition and lifestyle rehabilitation is what we call it. And it's ITHNCLR. It's kind of, the acronym is meant to kind of spell out ITHNCLR.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we'll hopefully get that published soon.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to reading that. Good luck with the last stages, because I know that's the process.
Yeah, the review process and all that. Yeah. You think it's done, it's submitted, you think it's done, and then it's like, nope, just the beginning.
Yeah. So tell us about your current work. So you have your Solcere Health Clinic, Solcere Health Clinic, and Marama. So can you share a little bit about each of those and what they're about?
Yeah, so at Solcere, we have the clinical part of the Bredesen Protocol is what we do there. So we partner with them. So we help with Apollo, which is Dr. Bredesen's, his business, where they create these ReCode reports. So it's basically Dr. Bredesen's brain in an algorithm, in an AI system. And so all the lab data gets in there, and some of the health history gets in there. And then we help people kind of make sense of that. It's this big, thick, 56-page book, basically about your brain health and what to do. And so we help people prioritize and go through that. We review the ReCode reports with them, or the PreCode if you're in prevention. So we review all of that with everyone, help them get on get all the pharmaceuticals that might be associated, bioidentical hormone replacement, if they need. Sometimes we'll use pharmaceuticals like for antivirals, acyclovir or valcyclovir if people are suffering with herpes, or we'll use cholestyramine or something like that as a binder, depending on, all of this is precision medicine. So it's very individualized depending on the patient needs and risk benefit analysis for that particular person. So the medical stuff happens over at Solcere, and then the lifestyle stuff, the residential stuff, that happens at Marama. So one of the things that I was seeing as I was seeing more and more dementia patients was that it worked for people who did it. It didn't work if you didn't do it, right? Which is very obvious. Mm-hmm. And I also realized, as you mentioned in my bio, right, it's hard for even people with full cognitive capacity to implement a ketogenic diet, particularly when we were told through the 80s and 90s, right, that you're supposed to eat just carbs. Carbs are the foundation of a whole grains are the foundation. 8 to 12 servings a day is just radically bad advice. It's the opposite of a brain healthy diet, to limit fats and have tons of carbs. This is why there's an obesity epidemic and dementia and diabetes, all of it, heart disease. So we're having to reprogram what people think is healthy. And in that process, I saw okay, that doesn't work for everyone. The other thing is, because what we would see is that especially our older ladies, they would start to lose too much weight because they're afraid of fat. And now we're making them afraid of carbs. Well, now they weren't eating anything. So they were losing too much weight. So we needed to get them into like either meal delivery, or we needed to get them into an environment where that was supported. The other thing I ran into a lot was, maybe you can relate to this. I certainly could, was the sandwich generation. Typically it's a daughter who's coming to us whose mom or dad has dementia. And the daughter's well-educated. She wants what's best for mom or dad. However, she's got a full-time job. She's got kids. She's got a house to manage. She's got, her vacation coming up. She's got whatever she's got going on in her busy life. And she doesn't have time to drop everything and make sure that mom or dad is getting the activities and the exercise and the diet, and that they're not eating cake and cookies, and that they're not forgetting to show up to this or that appointment. And so I realized very quickly that like really what people need is to just be able to drop mom or dad off. I know it sounds kind of horrible, but like to have the peace of mind that, okay, they're in the right place where it's high integrity. They're getting all of these things that are value, all of the components of the program are all in one place where it's super simple, right? And there's not cookies in the pantry, right? There's no risk of them eating a banana and falling out of ketosis because it happens to be on the counter. They're in an environment where it's fully immersive. So I kind of thought to myself, like, well, why is nobody else doing this, for one? Because I looked around after people asked for referrals, and there wasn't really anyone else doing it. There were places trying to do it as like a subset, but if you sit down next to somebody who's having cake and ice cream for dessert and you're not supposed to have it, like that feels terrible, right? So at Marama, we have cake and ice cream, but they're keto. We celebrate. We have our ways of celebrating, but everything's within the dietary parameters of the Bredesen Protocol. So when I saw that nobody else was really doing it, I thought, how hard could it be? We'll just create one. And that actually fell together quite seamlessly. And then we opened, it was wonderful. Dr. Bredeson came down for our grand opening party the end of February of 2020. And then we opened the first week of March of 2020. And our first resident moved in March 7th.
Wow.
I think the world shut down 3 days later. Mm-hmm. And so that was a wild ride to go through, opening basically a nursing home the week that COVID hit the planet. But it was actually all fine and good. And we had one resident get COVID in January of this year, and she did just fine. It was okay. And I think part of that maybe was because she just had a sore throat for the weekend. Part of that might've been because she's been exercising and getting this great diet and in that community. And so her health was really, really well supported at a foundational level, I hope anyways, or I'm just speculating, but it's been, now we've been full for about a year. With the maximum number of residents that we can have. And we're looking to expand because we've got a bit of a waiting list. So we'll see, we're working with a group in Kansas, and then there's a couple groups here in California that have reached out that are hoping to help us expand quickly.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I heard whisperings of you maybe a couple years ago. I heard that there was this place in California, but it wasn't until more recently when I was going through the Bredeson training. Actually, I'd reached out to you before you showed up on one of the last modules. I was like, oh, I know her. Well, I sort of know her. I know who she is. So it was exciting to see you in one of those last modules. I'm several years behind you with the PreCode and ReCode 2.0. And I had the same thought that you did. Why isn't there a place where we can, because just like you said, this is hard to implement. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm an occupational therapist, health coach. And then early in 2020, just before COVID hit, I finished a functional medicine training. And again, the last module on that training was, hey, we might be able to prevent and reverse dementia. And my mom had died the year before and of dementia. And I had done a health coach training, like knowing that there was more that I could do, but I didn't know exactly what. And it wasn't until first the functional medicine training, and then of course, Dr. Bredeson's training, where I was like, there's so much more that I can do. And now I know what to do. But trying to implement that on a day-to-day basis for most people is really challenging. So I don't have a place yet, but we're doing a retreat. So I thought if we can do it in like little bits and just give people like 4 days of this is what it's like,
Yeah.
maybe you can take some of this home with you. So
I love it. Oh, how wonderful. I want to come.
I'm so excited. So it's at Casa Potomac in West Virginia, and it's in a mansion overlooking the Potomac River. Like just the pictures are beautiful. We're gonna have yoga. We'll have keto diet, and the owner teaches the Wim Hof breathing technique and does ice baths.
Wonderful.
So it'll be my first ice bath. I'm excited. I'm building up to it.
That'll be amazing. Oh my gosh, I want an invite.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I've also like continued to grapple with is how do we get more people access? And, ultimately, like I would like to disrupt senior living to the degree that we like make that obsolete, that it just is heartbreaking to me that we relegate seniors to these living facilities where they're parked in front of TVs and fed the absolute worst things for their brain. And then they're not in the fabric of our societies at the height of their wisdom and experience when they have so much to offer us.
Yeah.
And so that inspired, not being able to Marama, we've had a wait list for essentially a year. And so we don't have enough space. And I think that doing the best we can with kind of like, for lack of a better term right now, like this crappy situation, right? Like I hate the idea of senior living. And nobody wants to go into a senior living, right? They want to stay with their family. They want to stay home. And so because we were struggling to expand as quickly as we had, people wanting to move in, what I thought is how do we get people access to this at home? So I created the Marama at Home course, just trying to give people as much support as possible remotely. And we have coaching as well, group coaching for that as well, over 12 weeks to help people incorporate as much of the Marama experience that we offer in California at home. And then I was talking to one of the coaching clients the other day, and they are just so, so, so sweet. And the husband has pretty severe dementia. He's got a MoCA of 10, and his wife has some forgetfulness, but not, her cognitive decline isn't too measurable. I think it's subjective at this point. She's like, I wish he could have moved in with you guys at Marama, but you didn't have space. It's like after listening to her talk about how great the diet is, and their great granddaughter comes over, and the great granddaughter basically bosses around her great grandpa and tells him to focus and tells him to do his brain activities and tells him to sit up straight and stuff. Is just so sweet. And listening, even he was pitching in and telling us about the great granddaughter. And I was like, no, like you should not be at Marama. You need to be home with your family. Like this is what it's about. As we age, we want you there. We want you there in that fabric of community. And if we can do this Bredesen protocol earlier, when we have more confidence, I wish I had met Bob 5-10 years ago, and we could prevent this. And certainly for his wife, I'm like, let's focus on you. We've got to get you as much exercise and the sleep. Like you got to figure out something with your cats because they can't wake you up at night. You need that sleep. And so getting her the support so that she never ends up where he does, so she can stay, because she's in a Bible study. She's involved at church. She's got 3 kids and 6 great grandkids and a bunch of, I don't even know how many grandkids. So there's all this family that she's involved in, and she's caring for her husband. And I just, the thought of taking her out of that like society pays a price, a big price, both when there's cognitive decline, but even just removing people from that, that's kind of the saddest part to me.
Yeah, I love that you're offering both options. So you have the Marama experience, but you only have 12 beds?
We have 12 beds right now.
So, you get 12 lucky people, but that you're offering the course. It's called Marama at Home.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because before I did the health coaching and the functional medicine training, I did an aging in place business because I've worked in assisted livings and I know what they're like. And I know that most people want to stay at home, just like you said. And so just going through people's homes and looking at, the things that might cause them to fall. And can we minimize the fall risk? Because that 9 times out of 10 is the reason why people have to go into a nursing home or assisted living because they broke their hip or that was the reason why my own mom ended up, in a facility at the end. So fall down the steps.
People talk about cancer, and obviously I don't want anyone to get cancer. Like, cancer's horrible. However, when I think about aging, like, what are the scariest things? A fall and dementia. Those things just destroy. It just changes the course of life pretty dramatically, and sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but a fall relatively quickly. And, we don't, at Marama, people still fall, and we're encouraging movement. That's one of the sad things about a conventional senior living facility, right? Is that they're discouraged from moving because they are a fall risk. So it's like, no, just stay in your chair, stay on the couch, stay in bed. And we really want people moving as much as possible. And in that, there's some fall risk, but really ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce fall risk by keeping them active, keeping the balance, getting people off medications that cause dizziness, and getting people on potentially the bioidentical hormone replacement that helps with muscle production and strength, so that people can be getting the PT and the OT and going to Pilates and yoga and doing all the strength training that helps them to not fall. Or if they fall, right, and also have the good, strong bone health, both from the hormone replacement and from the exercise and minerals and good diet, of course, so that they can avoid some of these really steep declines that often happen with aging.
Right, absolutely. And I love that you came from a holistic perspective before, so it wasn't a big leap to say we have to look at the whole person. We're not just going to give a pill, because, like you've mentioned before, one pill is not going to do it. So you're looking at all of it. So I want to make sure, I'm going to add this again at the end, but I want to make sure that if people want to get in touch with you and find out how do they get this Marama at Home course, and if they happen to be one of the 12 people that get in, how do they get into Marama? So how do people find you?
Yeah, so Marama Experience, MARAMA is how you spell Marama. Maramaexperience.com will take you to the Marama website, and Carrie is our director of operations over there, and she will help anyone get on the list. And, sometimes the list is moving really fast and other times it's not. And we are looking to expand and have more beds. So, it may be that something will be available. It helps us, if you're interested, to go ahead and get on the list, because that helps us know, like, yes, there's interest, and we should be focusing our energy on creating that availability. And then Marama, MARAMA, Marama at Home, ATHOME, maramaathome.com is where you can find the more information about the caregiver training course. And so that is directed, yes, at caregivers, but also if you're looking to prevent, it's really just a step-by-step. It's an 11-module course designed to help people implement, give you the resources and kind of the hand-holding of, like, the Bredeson book is phenomenal. And especially the Dr. Bredeson's The End of Alzheimer's Program is the name of the most recent book. And that one is really great. But some people see a book and feel really intimidated. Other times I have people coming into my office with the book and they're like, I'm so much better. I want to take it to the next level. Let's do all the testing. So you can totally use the book, $25 or whatever. And then if you're feeling overwhelmed by that, this is videos, it's interactive, there's worksheets, there's just a little bit more hand-holding and prioritization and kind of a step-by-step this is how you do it approach. And then, of course, I refer to Teepa Snow's work a ton. You and I both share a love of her work. She's so funny and engaging, which is part of it, but also just the practicality of how she describes things and how she interacts with people suffering with dementia. At Marama, we have this luxury that, like, we're not family, so we don't take anything personally when someone doesn't remember or can't hear or, like, claps back. It's not about us, right? It's part of the disease process. But when you're at home caring for a spouse or a parent or a sibling or someone you've known for decades, it's really easy to kind of fall into the trap of taking it personally, and then things escalate and there's a lot of emotionality. And so Teepa's work, I think, really, she communicates very well in very practical ways how to communicate and basically like de-escalate situations and make sure people are getting their needs met, really, in a way that helps and supports everyone involved. So that, I refer to her in our training and stuff. And I think that's a really important, very, very important piece of it.
Yeah. Her positive approach to care. She is coming on next month, so very excited.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. So for those people who are hearing for the first time that dementia and Alzheimer's might be preventable and reversible, what is your best advice? Somebody comes up to you and on the street and says, "What's your best advice?" What are the top three things, or where do you go from there?
Good question. So 80% of this is lifestyle. Like the medical part I do in my clinical practice, that's the 20% icing on the cake. The 80-20 on this is lifestyle. Get into ketosis, organic ketogenic diet, very vegetable heavy. So you need all those nutrients. So get into ketosis, use a ketone meter, make sure you're actually getting into ketosis. And then we have a keto diet guide on our website, Solcere, SOLCERE.com. If you just put in your email address, you'll get emailed the PDF of our keto diet guide, and that will help get you started if you're interested in doing that. Exercise like your life depends on it, right? Exercise, walking is not enough. So if you want to prevent or reverse cognitive decline, you need to be getting aerobic exercise and strength training. And then if possible, to layer on top of that, dual task exercises. So this is where you're engaging cognitively at the same time as engaging physically. So when you can do those two things together, you get much more benefit than if you're just doing one on its own. The other thing to consider with exercise is contrast oxygen therapy, which is like a whole tangent in and of itself. But if you want more information about that, we do webinars, and there's more information in the Marama home course as well. But contrast oxygen therapy is essentially this hormetic effect applied to oxygen and blood flow in your body, but especially your brain is where we're thinking of it here. So those are the 4 types of exercise, getting them regularly, where this isn't the exception, this is the rule, is that you're consistently getting a significant amount of exercise, aerobic, strength, dual task, and or contrast oxygen exercise. And then sleep. So diet, exercise, sleep and stress management, if I can add a 4th one, but treating obstructive sleep apnea is essentially mild brain damage every night. And as a brain doctor, like, no, not okay. Like, so even if a sleep medicine doc says, hey, it's just mild, you're under the threshold of obstructive sleep apnea. If you are having any apneic events at night, I recommend that you treat them. And there's even simple things like mouth tape or keeping, your airway open with breathe right strips or something like that. You can also get dental devices that help keep the airway open. It's not necessarily a CPAP, but whatever you need to do to treat sleep apnea, you are doing it so that your O2 sats do not drop at night, because that is so critically important to maintaining cognitive function. You need enough sleep. So giving yourself enough time to sleep, making sure that if you have insomnia, I would recommend staying away from benzodiazepines. If you're on them, work with the doctor to maybe get off of them, but still get good quality sleep. We do know that things like Ambien and Xanax, those benzodiazepine medications, are associated with cognitive decline. So even though sleep is important, we don't want to be taking like the quote unquote sleeping pills that use that mechanism. Same with Benadryl, the antihistamines can also have effect on cognitive function. So we want to sleep, but we want to get good quality sleep without the use of pharmaceuticals. So prioritizing diet, exercise, and sleep, I would say, would be the top 3 things. And even doing that for a lot of people, you will get some movement in cognitive function.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yes, with my first cognitive decline patient, that sleep was like the first thing. She's like, oh, she was 80 years old, but was still waking up with an alarm. I was like, well, do you have anything special that you need to get to? She's like, no, but it's just a habit. It's like, well, let's try for a week and see if you can wake up just on your own without an alarm. That was like, just that was like amazing. Oh, I get more REM sleep and I feel a little better.
Yeah. Alarms are like against my religion.
I know. Yeah. So, and thank you for really highlighting exercise. I know when my mom first got diagnosed, my dad and I went to NIH for a conference, and they were saying, there's this drug called Aricept, but it doesn't really work that well. The best thing to do, and they said then that was early 2000s. The most important thing is exercise. It is, if there was anything that was a magic pill, it's exercise. She had chronic fatigue syndrome. She didn't respond well to exercise at all. So, but years later, she went on an anti-inflammatory diet because I got diagnosed with MS and I went on an anti-inflammatory diet and she did the same thing. And then her chronic fatigue went away. She didn't get exhausted after she ate breakfast anymore. And so she never got up to, I would say, exercise, but she didn't have like, just the dramatic fatigue that she used to have. And she was able to walk around the block and a little bit more exercise and activity. So thank you for highlighting exercise and all the
like pulling on these threads, right? You have to like do the detective work of figuring out where is the place to start for this person, just to get a little win, a little momentum, push them in that right direction. And then all of a sudden, kind of like I was saying, it's this virtuous cycle, right? For her, it was changing her diet first, that then allowed her to exercise. And I bet she was getting better sleep. Now she has more energy. So now she can do the brain engaging, like she can learn to play the guitar, like whatever, learn a new language, whatever it is to get her the cognitive stimulation. Or now she's excited to have a dinner party and, or go play bridge with her girlfriends. All of a sudden, these things start to fit together. And now you can layer more and more and more on top. It's that getting started that sometimes is the biggest struggle.
Yeah. Can I return to ask two questions? I just want clarification. So if you could share with everyone, you mentioned hormetic. And people might not know what that word means.
Oh, I love this concept. It's one of my favorites. So the hormetic effect essentially is this concept that you can increase stress on a complex system. And this is really any complex system, like think education systems and government systems and whatever, financial systems. But we're talking about the human body, the human brain. So when we increase stress, not to the point of collapse, not, like with oxygen, for example, right? But like we're doing with LiVO2 contrast oxygen therapy, when you increase stress on the system by reducing oxygen, what you do is you get all of these adaptive responses. And so when we do that regularly, if you do too much of it, you suffocate, right? Like you die. So we don't do that. But if we increase this regularly, if you get this kind of like regular doses of stress, increase resilience in the system. And we apply this concept in a few different places. So one with the contrast oxygen. So we deplete oxygen when you're working, when you're exercising, we go to negative O2, like 8% oxygen versus 20%. And in that you get vasodilation of the blood vessels. You get a buildup of CO2, which causes that. You also get a destruction of senescent cells. So, anything that wasn't doing great is going to be recycled now. It's going to be like killed off and recycled. You get a signal to the body to increase the amount of mitochondria, or the part of the cells that create ATP or energy, fuel. So when you stress the system, you get these signals that then say, hey, become more adaptive, become more resilient. And so we do this with oxygen. You can do this with temperature. You were talking about an ice bath and the Wim Hof method, right? So the idea here, and his breathing does a little bit of that O2 piece, but with a lot of what Wim Hof is famous for, the Iceman, right, is temperature. He has a lot of resilience when it comes to very, very cold temperatures. And so if we go from our 73-degree house to our 73-degree car to our 73-degree office, we never ask the body to be in that high heat or the low heat. Well, now our bodies don't know what to do when you go to Arizona in the summer or Canada in the winter, right? And so if we expose our bodies to high heat, like in a sauna, and then cold, like in an ice bath, our bodies have this ability to respond to changes in temperature. So it's a little bit stressful, but now we have more resilience. We also get more blood flow. We get all of these signals to be more resilient. Then the ketogenic diet is also, it's a fasting mimicking diet. So caloric restriction is another way to use this hormetic effect. It's where we reduce calories or reduce carbohydrates. We force the body to change the fuel, right? Because that's part of resilience, is that you can use alternate fuel sources so that if one isn't available, you can use the other. Now we live in the standard American kind of diet, right? Everyone is exposed or getting carbohydrates every day their entire lives. They never have to use this adaptive kind of alternate system of fuel production, which is burning fats for fuel in the form of ketones. And so when we use all of these hormetic effects. I mean, exercise alone is this hormetic effect, right? You stress the muscle, and what does the muscle do? It grows to be stronger, to be more resilient. And so essentially what we're doing is applying these stressors in moderate doses so that the body and the brain have more resilience, more adaptive capacity. And that's potentially a definition of health, right? It's how you respond to stress in the environment, whether it's psychosocial stress or environmental stress, metabolic stress, whatever it is. So the idea is that we build those muscles, that we create more resilience, and in that we get better brains.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for explaining the hormetic effect. I didn't know what it was, but I used it all the time. And in occupational therapy, the theory that I follow is occupational adaptation. Shout out to Dr. Schultz, who's out there, who created it. And it's like a bullseye. So easy, where you're not challenged at all, is in the middle. And overwhelm is like on the outside, where, we shut down, or it's just too much. And kind of that just right challenge is in the middle. Like, we have to be pushing that edge. And I feel like that's my job, to find where the just right challenge is for people.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. We discussed that in terms of like activities. You want to be engaging the brain in a way, and this is going to change throughout someone's life and depending on the person, right? So somebody with a MoCA of 10 is going to be engaged by very different activities than somebody with a MoCA of 22. And we want to have someone stay engaged. We don't want it to be so challenging that they're giving up, they're walking away, but we also don't want it so easy that there's no rub, there's no effort that needs to be made. And so adapting the activities based on someone's function, cognitive function, is really important. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're describing, and physical ability as well, of course.
Right, exactly. And you also mentioned, when you were talking about exercise, dual task. So this is something that I learned at a continuing education conference years ago, and I loved it because it made therapy much more interesting. So if I'm doing, even if I'm just walking with somebody from their room to the rehab to do a 30 or 60-minute therapy session, I would say, hey, you want to play a game with me? You want to try to go through the alphabet and list girls' names? You go first. Oh, Alice. Oh, Betty. Oh, Carol. And so while we were walking, we would play these games. Made it so much more fun. So I'm wondering what your idea of dual task is. Give me some ideas.
Yeah, such a great question. So again, depending on capacity, it may be different for different people. So if I go to Pilates, I just kind of listen to the instructor and sort of check out. I kind of have to stay present, but for the most part, I can check out. For somebody else to listen and hear, take your right arm and bring it to your left hip. That is very cognitively challenging. And so sometimes it's that simple. It's just go to yoga class or go to Pilates, because it's going to take effort for you to keep up with the cues from the instructor.
Okay.
So that can be simple, right? That's available to most people. Now, dance is another one. And I put ballroom dancing in this category. I grew up in Hawaii, so hula dancing is another one. To remember the steps, where your body needs to be, and then also to pair that with the music, and potentially to pair that with a partner and where they are in space. This is a great way to engage cognitively at the same time that you're engaging physically. Now, it has to be physically challenging, right? If you're not dancing fast enough or quick enough, or you don't have to remember anything, then it's not as much this. But I do think that this can be applied for a lot of people. Dancing with a partner, especially, or to a routine, is very cognitively challenging. And then for other people, kind of exactly what you're describing, you have someone on a Bosu ball balancing, and they're telling you that American presidents in order, or they're listing states with their capitals, or it depends on what's challenging for them. Maybe it's doing math. And one thing to definitely note, nobody likes to hear this, but you want to lean into the things that are most difficult. So if math is what's most challenging, or language is what's most challenging, do those. Don't go back to the things that are easy for you. Do the things that are hard. And hopefully what you see is that they get easier over time. And at the very least, you maintain function. Now, another piece, and you want to, like, this is when we're engaging physically at the same time. So there are a couple people I think that are coming out with apps where they direct you in terms of what exercises to do, or they give you like hit intervals, and then they test you with something you find interesting. So hopefully there will be more support in this space. It certainly comes out of Parkinson's, traumatic brain injuries use this. Even the work around autism, they use these dual task exercises to help with brain training. I think of the Bredesen Protocol essentially as brain exercise, right? Sudoku and crossword puzzles, those are great and wonderful. However, for me personally, like, I don't need to be better at crossword puzzles for the rest of my life. I don't really want to like develop that skill, but cooking when we think about executive function of like planning meals, so cooking, deciding on what recipe you're going to make, creating the shopping list, executing, going and getting the shopping list, coming home, preparing that meal, and of course, enjoying a delicious keto meal. These steps, these processes that require multiple decisions and steps, those help to keep us independent. And like ultimately, what is the goal? It's activities of daily living, independence, not needing to go into senior care, right? Those are the things that I think are most valuable for most people. And this whole Bredesen protocol is really it is the bicep curls of maintaining independence. And so I think even though it's hard and people are sometimes resist getting into ketosis, I love that you're having to change your diet because it requires thinking of new things to make and going through that whole executive function process. And when it's a struggle, get help. But like the more you do it, you're working that muscle that you need to maintain independence.
Yeah, thank you. So when you talked about challenging yourself and doing things that you're not good at, I was like, oh, I have to count backwards by sevens more often, because that just sends me into a panic, like immediately.
Oh my gosh, on a MoCA, just skip that one. I can't do that.
Okay, so let's jump to your future vision. I know you've been doing a lot in the present. So you talked about, you're hopeful that more Marama experiences will open up. What is your 5 and 10-year plan? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I hope that we as a society, we reimagine aging. And really what I was describing earlier is like ultimately all seniors don't need to go, like seniors don't need to typically go into senior living, that they can stay in the fabric of their community. They can continue to contribute. We get that intergenerational wisdom transfer that I think is so valuable. And for seniors that go into senior living, that Marama becomes the standard, that a brain healthy diet, activity, encouraging activity and movement and engagement and socialization, and a healthy, non-toxic environment, that these just become the standard in the senior living industry. So we have some work to do, but I think that in my lifetime, those things are possible.
Yeah.
I love it. The retreat you were describing. So I've mentioned this publicly before, but like what tickles me is like, when I retire, I would love to go to Costa Rica and have there be like a retreat where you go for 6 months, you retire, right? Anybody who retires, you take your spouse or your best friend or whoever, and you go for 6 months and you learn, you do all the cooking classes, you get into the routine. So, because retirement is one of those moments, right? Like when you graduate from high school, you graduate from college, like or you become a parent, like your life starts, you kind of change your identity. And when you retire, a similar thing happens. It's like, who are you? Like, who do you want to be in retirement? What life do you want to lead? And I can imagine people going, like when they retire, go to some tropical place or some place and like have this immersive kind of a Marama-like experience well before there's any cognitive decline, and learn to live a brain healthy life. All the activities, all the recipes, and like get into the kitchen, like learn to do it, create the routines that you can stick to, and then take that home. And what I love about this idea is like people would come home and there would be a ripple effect, right? Like they would influence their communities that they would go back to. And also, I just want to go to this place. So if you can create one, if it's on the Potomac or wherever.
Okay, so you didn't know, but you just gave me a great segue. So I haven't even announced this yet. There is one plan. So there's this retreat this year is first annual. I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this a yearly thing. And my husband suggested, well, why don't you do like a a national and then an international one. And I've been talking about wanting to go to Costa Rica forever. And my daughter went this summer to a turtle sanctuary. And so next year's is in Costa Rica, 7 days instead of just 4 days, brain health, a yoga and brain health retreat. So I'll send you an invitation.
Wonderful. I'll meet you there.
Yeah, awesome. So is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap
Oh
up?
my gosh. I mean, I could talk about, we both, I'm sure, could talk about this stuff all day long. It's
Yeah.
really exciting. It's fun to talk to people who are also doing the work and living it and seeing, people get better. I mean, yes, we could talk all day, but no, I think the takeaway message is like, there's hope. There's definitely hope. And yes, it takes work. Yes, it takes commitment to the process, but a lot can shift, and there's hope for people with dementia, and certainly it can be prevented.
Yeah, awesome. And can you share again, or I'll share it because I did write it down. So you can go to Marama, M-A-R-A-M-A, maramaexperience.com, and also solcere.com.
Solcere.com will have that keto diet guide.
Okay, and that's solcere.com. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
The idea there is solutions for the brain, soul, or like shining light on the brain, the cerebrum, is kind of the idea. So
yeah,
funny.
I like
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here.